Hi, this is Kyle, and this is the last video in our Getting Started series, and this one's on the subject of academic integrity. If you don't know exactly what that means right now, well, you're in the right place because we're going to talk about that. This one is kind of an introduction to academic integrity. Academic integrity, for our purposes, refers to a kind of honest and moral behavior related to learning, research, and publishing in an academic setting. And Durham College has an academic integrity policy available at that link. It is not very fun to read, but I don't think it's important because of how fun it is. I wouldn't necessarily encourage students to read it, so I'm just going to give you the gist of the important parts now. The main reason, especially in our course, that a student would be considered academically dishonest is if they were using someone else's work as their own with or without permission. And so that's when you hand in some work that someone else did at least part of the work on, and whether you had permission or not, you're the one who took credit for it. That is considered academically dishonest. There are other things that are academically dishonest, such as sharing answers on a quiz or something like that, but the main thing we're looking at is taking credit for someone else's work. Providing someone else a copy of your work for them to use is also academically dishonest. In fact, it's quite possibly worse. I'm just going to cover this quickly. It's not really meant to be the point of the video, but it is probably the most commonly asked question that students have about academic integrity. There is an escalation policy related to academic integrity incidents, and generally, as of this recording, if you're found to be academically dishonest, if you cheated on an assignment essentially, the first offense is escalated to the dean's office, a note is made of it, and all of the students involved earn a grade of 0 on the assignment, whether they were the ones using someone else's work or whether they were providing work to someone else. For the second offense, and again this is generally true, for any student it typically results in an overall grade of 0 in the course where the incident happened. If a third offense happens, that typically results in a suspension from the program, meaning you're removed from the program for at least one full academic year before you can even come back. For international students in particular, this can waste a fantastic amount of money and time, and we have seen it happen. It is common, especially when I'm doing reports based on first offenses, for students to ask me, "Can I just get a warning this time?" And my response to that is, well, you've been warned. You've been warned. And your first offense essentially is a warning. All you're getting is a 0 on the one assignment. You're not getting a 0 in the course or anything else terribly impactful. So no, I personally don't do warnings. Some other professors do, but we tend to ask for these to be handled centrally. So no, there are not supposed to be any warnings. And I would say for your perspective, we're just not going to copy other people's work. There are other academic integrity consequences besides just the escalation I discussed. So besides getting a 0 on a piece of work or being kicked out of a course or whatever, you can potentially get a colleague in trouble. If you use a colleague's work without their permission, we're looking at the potential of getting them in trouble. You're going to damage your reputation with faculty, and by that I mean I'm unlikely to recommend a student that I find has been academically dishonest. You deprive yourself of the learning experience because our work is designed to be part of the learning experience. Our labs are part of the lesson, really. And when you cheat on those labs, you haven't learned the concept you needed to get out of that lab. You're going to miss out on developing required skills for the workforce. That's sort of a different way of saying the same thing, but we are thinking about your future career here. And when your employer needs you to do something, and it's something you cheated on so you don't have that skill, that's an issue. You're also not developing the skill in referencing and academic honesty itself. Academic dishonesty can pretty much always be avoided by just referencing the source of the work you got. So if you reference things properly, that's a skill you can develop. In the programming field, that's a real thing. That's useful, being able to properly reference code and go back and use that reference to develop a learning network. You're also going to fall behind on work because you're going to miss the concepts that you would have been developing. And if you take a 0 in a course, then that's potentially costly financially. We are talking about throwing away the money you paid to take the full course load. I did mention skills in referencing. So using code resources like Stack Overflow, dev.to, any number of possible GitHub repositories, there's tons of blogs, there's tons of tutorial sites. It's a very normal thing to use those resources in the programming industry. Your faculty are not pretending that coders aren't finding resources online. However, it's always good practice to reference any borrowed code. It's good in school because you can prove which parts are your own legitimate work, so we can grant you a legitimate diploma. But also, if that code you've tried to use doesn't end up working, you can easily go back to the source and see the potential fixes. If the code stops working later, you can revisit the source and possibly shift the blame depending on who you're talking to. It does build your professional learning community, especially if you're using a site like Stack Overflow and you find you're using the code from the same people again and again. You're going to recognize that those are the people you want to use as a resource for building your skills. And the other thing is, not referencing code from an outside source can actually get your employer in costly legal trouble. Now, this can sound weird, like if you went to Stack Overflow and you found a question and the answer to that question solved your question, and you just copied that verbatim into your code without referencing it, later on your employer might get a lawsuit based on that. And you say, but I just took it from a completely open web page. And this other company is saying, no, you stole our corporate secrets. And you say, no, it was free. It was available. Well, you better be able to prove that, because corporate espionage is a real thing. Code generated in service of a company is that company's intellectual property. Part of how intellectual property works is that you want to protect your own property, but you also have to respect that of others. Now, in terms of referencing style and how one references code, our program team, including the Intro to Programming faculty, as of right now at least, we haven't agreed on a particular standard for referencing code written by others. Most of us are going to be okay with you just writing a comment in your code that includes a URL and an author's username, if that's available, and that's a nice touch. Just a comment in the code, just like we've already done in Python with the hashtag. You just identify where you've got the code. Check with your professor if you're very concerned about how you've referred to other code you've accessed. As a general rule, the code that we provide you, using our videos or using DC Connect, that's fair for you to use however you like, and me personally, I don't even care if you reference it. With regards to other students' work, we don't want to go there. Don't take other students' work. And, much more importantly, don't give your work away to anyone, even if they say they won't use it. Somebody always does. Maybe not every single instance, but I can tell you that it happens to me pretty much every semester. And I often start the semester by telling my students, statistically, at least one person in this class is a scumbag. Remember that. In fact, statistically, it's probably 2 or 3 in every class, somewhere between 10 and 20% of students. You don't know who the scumbag is. The best thing you can do to avoid academic integrity problems is not giving your work away. And if everyone did that, we would drastically reduce the number of issues we have. While we're talking about not sharing work, it's worth talking about the emerging market of homework help sites, such as Chegg and Course Hero, among others, where they say that they're study help sites, but really we know that they do provide solutions to work, and they encourage you to upload your own for rewards. Your professors are aware of these, and in general, using these is a very, very bad idea, and we can't possibly advocate their use. They haven't really been used in a positive way as far as we've seen. With regards to trying to disguise someone else's work, well, there are a lot of ways to do that, and most professors know those techniques because we've been immersed in this for a while. And what we find is, when people try really hard to cheat and use somebody else's work and hide it for some reason, we're like, the effort they went to hide this is remarkable. If they had spent this kind of time doing the actual learning and the actual work on their own, they could have done some amazing work. But instead, they've plagiarized. I would encourage you to spend your time on the work rather than trying to not do the work, and I think you'll find it brings you a better balance of time. And if you're in a desperate situation where you're considering plagiarizing to get the work done, I think you should contact your professor and politely explain the situation instead. I can't speak for every professor in the program, but I will tell you that I would rather, if you're in a desperate situation, I would give you an extension, give you a couple hours of my time. We'll have a one-to-one meeting, we'll get you back on track, and I'll have you understanding the work rather than having you plagiarize. If you're in a bad situation and plagiarism seems like the only way out, I promise you it isn't, and what you need to do is talk to someone. As of this recording, there's actually an academic integrity assignment associated with a communications course that most of you are probably enrolled in. I believe the assignment's available early in the course. It may even be open now. I suggest that you do it as soon as you can because you don't have a lot of assignments at the start of the semester and the stress level is lower. If you have any question at all about what can constitute cheating, there are tons of resources about this, including the SALS Academic Integrity course. It's probably linked in your course on DC Connect, or maybe in your communications course, but if you've got any questions, please reach out to your instructor. So this is the same thing again. Don't take other people's work, and maybe more importantly, don't give away your work. Reference any code you use that is written by others, and consider doing your academic integrity assignment. Some things you should know that come out of here. Maybe you can name at least 2 bad things that happen every time you copy someone's work. And if you're using code we found on the internet, why is it useful to you to reference that code? Thanks.